This is a beautiful love story about a man in prison and a single woman struggling with her life. They get to spend 18 years apart, but eventually they end up together. Love is something that never dies and keeps lit inside of us no matter how long we stay apart from our loved ones. Welcome to Movie Recall. In today's video, we will be going through the 2013 movie Labor Day. It's time to recall. Let's get started. Turn on subtitles and spoilers ahead. The movie begins and Henry is telling us the story. He tells us about Adele, who is a single mother. Her husband left her years ago and Henry, her son. Adele has a very depressing life and even her 13-year-old son Henry notices this sometimes. Adele struggles with everything in her life and she spends her life in fear, which even makes her hands shake most of the time. Henry's father had married again and even had a daughter with his new wife. Sometimes he used to take Henry to spend time with him. Adele wants her son to become a good person and she takes care of his every need. She even teaches him how to dance. Adele takes Henry everywhere she goes as she is afraid of facing people alone. They go to a superstore to buy things for Henry as his school is about to open. At the store, Henry looks at some magazines when a man named Frank approaches him. Frank is injured and he asks Henry if he will be able to help him. Henry tells Frank that he is here with his mother and he cannot help him. Frank looks at Adele and tells him that Adele might be able to help him. Frank and Henry walk up to Adele and Frank asks Adele for a ride. She refuses to give him a ride and Frank grabs Henry by his shoulder in a threatening way. Adele agrees to give him a ride. As they get in the car, Frank tells Adele to take him to their home and he says that he just wants to rest for a while. She asks him how he got wounded and he tells her that he was in jail. He had been shifted to a hospital for an operation to remove his appendix. Before the operation, Frank jumped out of the window of the hospital and ran away. As they get home, Frank helps them with their grocery and he tells Adele to let him live with them for some time. Adele is really scared and she asks him if he will hurt them. Frank tells her that he has never hurt anyone without any reason. He promises Adele that he will not harm them and that he will even help her out with any work at home. Adele tells Frank that people are always coming around the house and if she does something stupid, he will not be able to get away with it. Frank tells her that he just got out of jail and does not want to go back. As they watch the TV, Frank is all over the news. He tells Adele and Henry that the police are looking all over for him. If anyone catches Frank, Adele and Henry will also be in trouble for helping him. Frank has an idea and he ties Adele up so that if anyone catches him, Adele and Henry will be proven innocent. Then Frank starts to make food as Henry sits and watches him. Frank is a good cook and he makes a delicious meal for them all. As Adele is tied to the chair, Frank feeds her himself. At this point, Henry remembers that his mother told him that whenever a person gets old, they start to get lonely and they need someone with them in their life. Henry starts to wonder that his mother has been lonely for so long and if Frank could be that someone in Adele's life. Later that night, Frank goes to Adele and asks her when the train leaves as he had a plan for getting on the train. Henry gets up at night and as he comes to see his mother, he notices that she is tied on her bed and Frank is sleeping on the couch downstairs. The next day during breakfast, Henry asks Frank how he ran away from the hospital. Weren't there any guards with him? Frank tells him that the guard had to go out to smoke and he told him that if he goes, he will jump out the window and run away. The guard thought that he was joking and as he left Frank alone, Frank jumped out the window and ran away. Adele comes to them and asks Frank why he hasn't tied her today. He tells her that if the police ask her, she can tell them that Frank tied her and she won't be lying about it. Frank cannot hear any train noise and Adele tells him that it was a holiday because it was Labor Day and no trains were leaving today. He did not want to become a burden upon Adele and Henry, so he starts to do work around the house. Frank repairs the stairs, fixes their car, and even cleans the house. He teaches Henry how to play baseball. Their neighbor, Mr. Jervis, knocks on the door and Frank grabs Adele, telling Henry to get rid of him. Henry opens the door and Mr. Jervis goes to give him a bucket filled with peaches and asks him where his mother was. Henry tells him that she was taking a bath. Mr. Jervis warns him about a crook who just ran away from the hospital and tells him not to open that door for any stranger. This was the reason he came over, to warn his mother, and then Mr. Jervis left. Adele gets angry with Frank as he was setting a bad example for Henry by making him lie. Frank respects Adele's opinion as he is a good person from the heart. Frank then tells them that the peaches Mr. Jervis gave them are too much and that they will never be able to eat them all before they start to rot. He has an idea and they all start to cut the peaches to make a pie. Frank teaches them how to make the pie and they work on it like a family. As Adele's hands start to shake, Frank gets close to her and makes her feel confident about herself. Henry notices them getting closer. At night, the police car passes their house as they are looking for Frank. This is an opportunity for Frank to run away, as the police will not come back for a few hours. Adele and Henry stop him and tell him that he can stay with them until his wounds get healed properly. The next day, Frank again gets to work around the house, and he helps fix many things that Adele was unable to fix. He then teaches Henry how to change a flat tire of a car. He also tells him that he must learn this, because if he is riding with a girl and the tire goes flat, he has to man up and be able to change the tire. Henry goes to the store to get some groceries. There, he meets a girl named Eleanor. She tells Henry if he eats or drinks something out of aluminum packing, his memory will get weak. As Henry goes to the counter, the shopkeeper tells him that a safety razor is not good for his mother, and Henry tells him that the razor is for him. When he walks home, he sees the cops putting on posters of Frank, and a cop tells Henry to tell him if he sees him. Back at home, Evelyn walks into the house as she is looking for Adele. Frank grabs Henry and hides instantly. Adele goes to Evelyn, and Evelyn asks her to look after her paralyzed son Barry, as she has to go somewhere. As Adele takes Barry inside the house, he sees Frank, and they know that Barry will not be able to speak about this to anyone because of his condition. Frank takes Barry and the whole family out in the backyard to play baseball. They have a great time there. The day was well spent together, and at night as they watch the TV, Frank is still all over the news. Barry gets really uncomfortable, and when his mother comes, he starts to tank Frank's name. She slaps him thinking that he is misbehaving and takes him home. At night, as Frank and Adele talk about running away together, Henry listens to what they are talking about. He thinks that they both will run away and leave him alone with his dad. Frank then tells Adele that he did not kill anyone and he was actually innocent. He tells her that when he was young, he fell in love with a young woman. As their affair continued, she told him that she was pregnant, and Frank married her without thinking. Afterward, he caught her having another affair, and when he confronted her, she told him that he was a fool. As they argued, Frank pushed her, and she hit her head and died. Frank had no intention of killing her. His wife had already thrown the baby in the bathtub, killing him. The police thought that Frank killed both of them, and he was sentenced to prison. Adele tells Frank that he should try to make everyone understand what had happened, but Frank tells her it has been years now and no one will trust him. Adele tells Henry to go get some books from the library as they were moving to Canada, so they needed some information. At the library, Henry again meets Eleanor, and he asks her what she was doing there. She tells him that her parents got divorced, she used to live with her mother, but she is getting married to her boyfriend, so she moved back in with her father. Henry tells her that his mother also has a new boyfriend, and she tells him that things start to get weird when the boyfriends come in. He should go talk to his mother about it. Henry's father takes him out from dinner with his family and tells him that he should participate in sports at school. Henry tells him that he wants to dance, but his father tells him that there is no man at home, so he must guide him on what is wrong or right for him. Henry tells him who says there is no man at home, and his father gets curious. As Henry is leaving, his father tells him that he has to be aware of who is near him, as he is his father. When Henry gets home, he is sad, and Adele asks him what was wrong with him. Adele then tells him that they are running away to Canada and Henry is going along with them. Henry goes to meet Eleanor and tells her that he is going to Canada. She asks him about Frank, and Henry tells her that Frank is a good person. Eleanor is smart and she figures out that Frank is his mother's new boyfriend and asks Henry. Eleanor tells him that this is just like Bonnie and Clyde, but they were killed by the cops. She tries to scare him, but then she tells him that she is also all alone and she does not want Henry to go away and leave her alone again. Back at the house, Frank feels pain in his wound, and Adele decides to go to the pharmacy and bring some medicines. As she gets in the car, she cannot start the car. Frank notices this and comes and sits in the car and asks her if she had doubts about coming with him. She tells him that after Henry was born, Adele had multiple miscarriages. She even gave birth to a daughter, but she also died during birth, which had broken Adele. This was the reason her husband left her, and she will not be able to give Frank a family. Frank tells her that he already has a family and that Henry was his son. The next day, as they were about to leave, Henry gets up early to write a letter to his father. He puts that letter into his father's letterbox, and as he is coming home, a cop gives him a ride. When he sees that Adele is packing her stuff, he helps her with putting a few boxes in her car and then leaves. Adele goes to the bank with Henry and withdraws all her money. Frank is alone at the house, and Evelyn comes in and sees Frank. She asks him about Adele, and he tells her that she is out for some work. When Adele and Henry get back home, Frank tells them about Evelyn, and he also tells her that Henry's father called. Frank hugs Adele and tells her that now it is impossible for them to leave, so he ties Henry and Adele. He tells Henry that he is a great boy, and if a girl breaks his heart, that girl was not worth it. He then tells Adele that he can go back to jail now, as he was happy about the time he spent with her. The cops surround the house, and Frank surrenders himself to them. The cops thought that Adele and Henry had nothing to do with anything. After a while, Adele talks to the prosecutor to get Frank out of the jail, and he tells her that if she sets herself on this path, she will have to tell the truth to the judge. This might result in her losing custody of Henry. She cannot do anything, as she never wanted to lose Henry. After some months, Adele decides to give custody of Henry to his father so that he can have a better life. She also tried to meet Frank but was unable to do so as he was in solitary confinement. She wrote many letters to him, but all of her letters were returned as Frank was shifted to another jail. Many years have passed now and Henry is grown up. He is about to join college. He also has a beautiful girlfriend. All the things that Frank taught him are coming to his use now. One day his father takes him out for food. He then tells him that his mother was really beautiful and he did not do right to her when he left her. Henry forgives his father and tells him that he wants to spend his last summer before college with his mother. Many more years pass, and we see that Henry has a successful bakery now, all thanks to Frank's recipes. Frank is in the prison and he writes a letter to Henry and tells him that he was proud of him. He also tells him that he was getting out of prison soon and wanted to spend his life with Adele. Henry writes back to him saying that his mother lives in the same house and Frank should write to her. When Frank gets out of prison, Adele is there waiting for him, and they both spend their lives happily ever after. The movie ends here. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new movie recaps.